Hey, Tux.
looking very steampunky with just a.
One of the things with basic mode was just about sort of taking a stand and taking a big step back on the UI. And what we've seen is some early positive results that the UI itself is less friction, and the friction for new users is more about finding people or relevant things to do. So there's a set of efforts that are going on in that direction as well. But in regard to what's coming to Basic Viewer, it's too basic today, and we totally recognize that the lack of having a view into your inventory, the lack of being able to transact or have access to your Linden dollars, the lack of voice are some of the things that we must do. And the only reason you haven't seen them show up right is, from an experience perspective, we really want to roll out new features or new interfaces to users where we think they're going to have a higher chance of succeeding in using those interfaces. And so those things are underway, and you will see them coming very, very soon, along with a host of other things in the advanced side of things as well, such as Winlight estate settings and other things that do affect you guys.
Oh, that's nice and cool, because I suppose for me, I saw the attraction because what you're doing is you're giving them half a sandwich from the buffet, and then you want them to go in and get the rest of the buffet and use the full viewer. But it was really nice to be so fast, but I was left wanting more, and so it's good news, I think, and everyone will be quite pleased to hear about that. Before we go on to Mesh, I've got some questions, and if you don't mind, I'd like to jump straight into those because we only got you for a certain amount of time. Wurlitzer Seisenbacher asks, can you please ask Rhett why Viewer 2.0 option of full screen mode is missing? And I'll tell you why it's important, because that's what easily allows us to have 1080 HD, and on a smaller monitor it's very difficult to do that, and if we can't film at full HD for 1080, then we don't get as good a resolution as we'd like to. So that's actually a really important question.
Yep, understand. And there are certain questions that I'll take directly, and there are certain questions of why my friend Richard is standing right behind me. So, Richard, did you catch the question? Are you able to talk about full screen mode?
I did.
Hello, Richard.
Hello. My viewer is going really slow at the moment. Hopefully not too choppy. So basically it came down to, with the full screen mode, is it was becoming impossible to support. We had a lot of crashes related to switching in and out of full screen. And for technical reasons I won't go into, basically switching modes like that makes a lot of drivers not behave so well. And so we sort of just made the decision that for our core experience, it wasn't important enough relative to the amount of work that went into fixing those bugs, for every single driver version out there. That said, we are considering a full screen mode that doesn't actually switch your monitor resolution, but just uses your existing desktop resolution, but gets rid of all of the window chrome. I don't know if that meets your needs, though, for Machinima.
I think it probably would, and also some of the other third-party viewers are making it possible to have the window size that you can directly choose, which might be something for you guys to look at, and that would be really, really useful. So thank you for that, Richard. That is useful. I thought it was down to sort of Kirsten's has it for definite because they've got a machinima menu for us guys, so that might be worth you guys having a look at. I do have another few questions. Percival is going to ask you something now. Percival Anties. Sim crossings are an issue for action machinima. Can anything be done to make them smoother? Which is the age-old question in SL, but it is true. If you're trying to do something that's action-based, don't really want... They're working on it.
I can elaborate a little bit.
Okay.
So the short story is, and Richard, you can jump in, I'm not going to go into the engineering level detail, but there was some improvements made of region crossings some time back. But since Bagman Linden, our new VP of engineering, got here, he dug deeper into the problem, and he essentially has identified the inefficiency that is in the system of crossing regions, and he's got folks looking at how to remove those inefficiencies. But essentially, it's just code that needs some leaven there. But the good news is we're well aware of it, and we're actually aware of the cause of it, and that's, I think, a big part of the solution.
That's really good news, because if you want to do a chase scene and then we elastic band everywhere, then it's a little bit frustrating. And I know that Percival's actually done machinima that uses mainland for chase scenes, and he's done incredibly well, so I know that's a subject that's dear to his heart. I'm going to just start hitting you with questions, guys, I'm afraid. Let's have a look. Stuart Wolf asks, are there any machinima specific tools in the works in the future, for example camera tracking tools or camera position saving tools?
There's nothing specific right now. However, that is something that one of the reasons we attend meetings such as this is to take input from you guys, and whenever that input is well aligned with our strategies, we try to take those into consideration and fold them in. And sometimes they're absolutely deliberate responses to requests, and sometimes they're sort of happy accidents, as I would call the depth of field in mesh is sort of a happy accident that really is going to help you guys out, but was fed to them, but there was other people working on it already, as it turns out.
Yeah, I mean, depth of field is going to be absolutely lovely for mesh, and I know that lots of people are very excited about it, and we're really pleased about that, and I'm sure you could tell my enthusiasm when you sent me that email. I was like, yay, so I was very pleased. Ludy's got a question, Ludy Graves. There's been a major problem with roofing lately when somebody crashes and he was not in sight, like behind a wall or something, and then comes out, he's either small or roofed. Is that something you guys are working on? And I've noticed that as well. We don't so much get the cloud now, we're actually getting old-fashioned roof, which sometimes can be a problem if you're filming a live event, I know. Clouds were really nice and were easy to fix. But when somebody turns up and actually looks like roof, it can be a problem, and that tends to happen in more laggy situations. I wondered if you guys were aware of that.
We just thought we'd bring back a classic, it's just something that you all loved from before, and why not bring it back? Actually, I think that we do have some awareness of that, and Richard, do you have some comments on that?
I was just going to say Ruth is our mascot, but I don't have any specific details. I know my team in particular did a little bit of research into issues with switching avatars and routing, but it's a complex problem, and every time we fix it in one case, it sort of pops up in another, just because there are a lot of moving parts. So not to be evasive, it's something we're continually looking at, and that's useful data that you're saying that you're seeing it a lot more now.
Yeah, I'm seeing it lots in particularly busy sims and laggy situations. So it's nice to see Roof back. I mean, we all cried a bit when Roof went. So if we can get Roof back, can we get the hippos back as well? That's a personal request then. My next question is from Flimsy. How can we maximize our bitrate out of SL? Do you have any hints or tips we can use to get better frame rates? And how often do the SL servers update textures per second?
I'll have to see if Richard can handle that one. One's beyond my technical level.
I'm not sure I fully understand the question. So the first question was about bit rate or frame rate?
Well, bit rate. So let me sort of just go into something technical from our side of view, and I understand what Flimsy's getting at here. Because the way the textures update and animations work within Second Life, and I'm sure Flimsy will correct me in chat if I'm wrong on this, but when we upload videos and we've done post-processing or we've got our AVI files, bitrate to places like YouTube will greatly help us or hinder us in the amount of pixelization we get. So there is a sort of very magic encoding point within YouTube that allows us to do things because it's animation and it's not film, which is slightly different. And I think what Flimsy's asking is, let me put this the right way, is there a way that we can get some information about the speed in which the servers in SL transmit the information, if that makes sense.
I think so. I mean, basically it comes down to the servers transmit information as fast as they can. Now they're spending time, sharing time between all the different viewers that are connected. I mean, I could give you all sorts of numbers, but they would sort of be meaningless in this context. I mean, like I know our physics frame rate is around 45 FPS, but I mean that doesn't really impact what you as filmmakers are seeing. So there's no real hard and fast number I can give you. It's really just, you know. And the reason it's so variable from experience to experience is that the simulators are trying to keep up as fast as they can.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, you know, the mileage may vary hugely because dependent on whichever 250 graphics cards it is you're using at that point. So, you know, I understand that it's very much server and your mileage may vary, but it is, you know, it's an interesting problem we have because we're basically filming animation, and that bit rate needs some sort of secret sauce formula that nobody's completely found in which to have the best resolution possible, and I think that's what Flims is getting at. And yeah, okay, that's a good answer to a difficult question. Our next question is again from Stuart. With the basic and advanced modes now available, will there be future modes that are specific to certain tasks, like a builder mode or a machinima mode, similar to how programs like Photoshop have implemented recently?
So I'll take that one, and because I've been doing work on our UI strategy, I can't commit to things like that are far enough out and are enough risk of failing to deliver on. What I can say is I believe that is the right answer and have done a lot of research internally on doing so, and that would actually allow us to get rid of having to relog between basic mode and advanced mode if you just had more modes or layouts and whatnot. And there's a couple of different groups that have looked at this issue, and we're going to be spending some time discussing it internally and how it fits into the short-term roadmap that the teams are going against. But I will go on record of saying I'm a fan of that approach and think it's ultimately the right one.
Yay, that's good to know, because that would be really good for the general population as well. So that's brilliant news. Phaylen asks, any thoughts on showcasing or curating a part of the official SL website to display work from Second Life machinists who beautifully exemplify the cinematic possibilities of the platforms? Phaylen, I'll speak to you about that later, about making me say that. But that's a good point. Basically, we kind of want our showcase back. I know we've got the MOM, but it would be really nice if we had something like the showcase back. And I know it's not specifically Viewer 2 related, but I think it's probably a valid point close to anybody in this group's heart, really.
So here's the long story short. I've definitely heard that one loud and clear from this community, and while it's not an official project, I secretly have a guy, it's no secret, I'm telling you all now, working on a front end to what I hope to become a showcase where we can control the user experience, the branding, the presentation of the categories, the lists and whatnot, even though it's all sitting on top of YouTube. And I'll have an update on that project in the coming weeks, not longer than that. I already looked at a version 1.0 of it yesterday, and the technology that that I've spent a little bit of time on, it goes a little bit further from that as well. It actually has the ability to read from an XML file and play back closed caption or song lyrics or things of that nature below the film or on the film. So we're trying to spice it up, but we've definitely heard that request for the showcase loud and clear, and it's something I've been very committed to trying to get back and actually made some progress on. So I'll circle back with the three main requesters of that project and share with you in the coming week perhaps what we've built so far.
We really like you, Rhett. We just want to say that right now. We really, really like you. Thank you very much. That will make us very, very happy. I'm just waiting for some more questions to come in, if there are any. But I wanted to sort of revisit a little bit on mesh, and I know the hot question that you're being asked all the time, and I'm sure you've probably got a macro for it. But I think probably one of the, I don't know if a lot of machinimatographers have been out onto the mesh grid and had a look at the fantastic stuff that's been happening on there. And we love you as well, Richard. Please don't feel like you're losing out on the love now. We love you as well. So I just wonder, I think probably one of the main questions people have got is mesh going to cause us more heartache in terms of FPS, or do people who have got not the best graphics card need to go out and perhaps update to get ready for it? Sort of looking at mesh from a machinimatographer's point of view, which is all about FPS and the perhaps problems potentially with LOD and things like that.
Yeah, Richard, I don't know. You can add to this. I'm going to give a somewhat vague answer and just say that generally speaking, my observations is that it's more efficient overall. Now, the way that you measure those efficiencies is done a lot of different ways, and that's why the devil's in the details. What I would suggest beyond whatever Richard wants to add is let me bring a mesh expert to this meeting at some point in the future, since Richard and I are not, and you'll have a far more accurate representation of the pros and cons from a filmmaker's perspective.
That would be really, really good, because I know everybody is very hungry to go and film some of the amazing stuff that's being done, and we all want to get it in here so we can incorporate it with the content that's already here. So we're all sort of looking at it and wondering exactly what's going to happen, because lag on the beta grid is very, very different. So
yeah, I think I can add to that. I mean, I think what it comes down to is that mesh allows for higher frame rates ultimately. It's just a more efficient use of your graphics card than what we're doing with prims. At the same time, it's more complex. It's more data that we're sending to you, so scenes will res in probably more slowly. I mean, it's a trade-off. But if you control the content and the meshes that you're using, then you can absolutely make a nice, fast, good-looking scene. So you have a lot more control on your end. But again, like I said, it might be at the cost of res time. I as Rhett said, I'm not an expert on mesh, so I can't really say for sure what the difference will be, but that's sort of my high-level view.
That's good information. I mean, we don't mind waiting for things to res. We're all used to that, being machinimatographers, so that's no problem. So thank you for that. Some more questions in. Here we go. Flimsy again has a question. What about creating a NimJam type way for music streaming live with more than one feed to land music stream? Is that something that's possible?
I'm going to punt over to Richard if he wants to take it.
What was the request again? Having more than one?
Yeah, basically having like NimJam, so you can choose what streams you have. You have a little bit more flexibility within the LAN tool to decide what's streamed where and when. So you can have more than one stream on there.
Oh, okay. Sure, that's technically possible. It's I guess it comes down to where that weighs against our other priorities. So, feature request noted.
Thank you very much. I'm quite liking this meeting. Thank you very much. So Marx Cataneo asks us: is there any timeline known for going to V2 completely to end all V1X versus V2X problems? That's another $1 million question for you.
Well, let me just make sure I rephrase it to say it correctly. Are you asking when are we going to move everything to 2.x and stop supporting 1.x? Is that the question?
Yes.
That is the question of the century, folks. It's actually we're having a lot of discussion about it right now, because here's my perspective on it. And this is not an official company line. I'm just going to tell you my feelings on it. We need to successfully migrate our viewer base, third-party viewer base, over to 2.x so that we can all innovate together. And I actually spent a lot of time with Linden today and talking about what that looks like in terms of like where's Phoenix, going to Firestorm. Kirsten's already on 2.x. The Imprudence folks are already, I believe, doing a 2.x build as we're speaking about. So, on one hand, we've got good motivations. Thank you. That is the name. We've got good motivations to move people over, because there are things that we're trying to do, like profiles and potentially profile APIs in the future, search, just other features that we need to do that break the 1.x experience. And you get to the point where it's been long enough, and it's holding all of us back, I would say. And so while there's no timeline in place, there's a discussion going on right now around what that's going to look like. What I can tell you is there will be proactive communication that gives everybody a long enough heads up. And of course, we, as in Linden Lab, have a vested interest in making sure that people that have a high percentage of viewers on the grid, that we want to make sure that they're able to successfully move up to the 2.x code base and bring their features forth. So hopefully that wasn't too politically correct of an answer, but it's coming, folks, at some point. It's just a matter of how to handle it the right way.
I think that's a fair enough answer. Starshine asked just in chat, can you have a V1 UI with V2 code?
I can take that if you don't mind, Rhett. So certainly there's a lot of capabilities for skinning in the V2 code base. In fact, most of it exists in the V1 code base. The limitation comes down to what pieces of UI are implemented in C++ code. There's some stuff that's been torn out. So it would have to be rewritten. So it's not just a simple matter of changing some XML files to get back the V1 skin. There's a fair amount of code that supports that functionality. But I could easily see a third-party viewer taking that on and just updating the V1 functionality to use the current skinning tools.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to just rack on with the questions that Phaylen has sent me. Has Linden Lab ever considered creating their own Machinima series of short features to use for marketing? Machinima is a great marketing tool, as Brett said, the other day at the MOM.
Well, first off, I actually got a lot of grief over using the word marketing, so I apologize for that. It was really intended to be the idea that it's good for all of you and it's good for us, and not a one-sided, hey, it's good for us, therefore we're going to exploit that. So I'm not sure how that was perceived, but anyway, apologies for the use of that word. In regard to our own series of machinima, we do on a monthly basis commission some pieces of machinima from the community, and we worked with a number of people that are here in doing so. And certainly some of you from the machinima community have told us that we should do a series of machinima, and it's something we're certainly considering as part of our future marketing efforts, although there's no specific project to do so yet. You have noticed us using it for that quite a bit now. I will say one last thing, by the way. We've been also publishing your content into our channel. I'll call that co-marketing for the sake of clarity. So folks that are interested in doing that, you can let myself or Brett Linden know, and we vet those and put them in the categories and whatnot, and that'll all be sort of part of that showcase strategy that Phaylen asked about earlier.
For the record, I don't think there's anything wrong with calling it marketing, because we're doing the best word of mouth marketing for you guys anyway, because we're passionate about the platform you've created. So that is the best and most free to air marketing you can get, and I'm not ashamed to do it. So don't worry about anybody giving you grief about it, because I think we've all backing. I know you did, yeah. And I thought it was slightly unjust, and it's not my place to say stuff. I'll say that on Twitter if it's all right with you. On to my next question, which is, let me have a look. Will we be able to see mesh content using third-party viewers to film content? So we'll be able to see it on TPVs, basically.
I know the answer, but it's probably easier for Richard. You want to take this one?
Go ahead, Rhett. I'm not sure on the exact timing of stuff. So.
Well, I guess the short answer, and just back me up on this, Richard, is the ultimate answer is yes, but those third-party viewers need to move up to the version of the 2.x code base that includes mesh.
That's really good news then. I like the nice, short, happy answers. That's good. Great.
Well, and I'll just say one more thing as it relates to the 1.20 or the 1.x code base. Mesh perhaps is a really good motivation for third-party viewers to want to move up, right?
I think it's a really good motivation. Yeah, that's what will draw people in. Okay, thank you for that. My next question is from Chafro Shoemaker, a little violent bunny you can see in the crowd. Will the lab put more effort into promoting machinima for machinima's sake rather than the benefit of the lab? I'm just reading this as I see it. Seeing as most of the audience for Month of Machinima was made up of machinimatographers rather than general residents because of short promotion outside of the machinima groups. So just to sort of paraphrase that, are you guys going to be pushing machinima a lot more apart from just May's MOM, I think is what Chaff's asking, because everybody at the MOM had tried to put something in rather than was just an interested party sort of thing, I think is the question.
Well, it's hard for me to say exactly, what our marketing efforts will say. What I will say though is that for those of you that have been following what we've been doing in Machinima, I have to believe that you would see it has been increasing significantly. And the MOM was one thing. Our newsletter last month was called the Machinima issue. We've renamed the video watch area to Machinima Watch. We're looking at the showcase, which is all about promoting your guys' work. So without specifically saying, we're going to go big on Machinima, it is a great vehicle to show the beauty and diversity of Second Life. And there's a lot of things that you can have already seen, I hope, that demonstrate the support and commitment to that.
My personal opinion on this, Chaff, is, I don't know if as the moderator I'm supposed to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. I think support from the lab for Machinima has shot up 1,000% since the start of the year, and they're doing some things right, and we've got to support them because they're supporting us, and that's my little eulogy over, if anybody cares what I think. So Marx has got a question, and it's, I've shot Machinima in full depth of field mode using the Space Navigator, and what I really miss is a switch between AF as it is now to MF to move focus with the scroll wheel. Could this be implemented, or who do we ask for it to happen?
Richard, I don't know if you have any input to that. I mean, it sounds like a really wonderful opportunity for a third-party open source contribution that we would take in. I don't know if you have something to add to that, Richard, or
not. Yeah, no, I think that's probably the best route for a change like that. I'm not completely familiar with the terminology, but I think I get the gist of the request, and it's, I mean, that's something that would come in as sort of optional behavior by a third-party dev would be perfect. It's not currently on our plate to do.
And just to clarify my statement, for folks that don't know, is that because we're an open source viewer, there are times when things happen in the open source community, and they submit those to us, and then we take those and we merge those into our official viewer as well. And in speaking with Oz today, there's been some opportunities to do more of that, and that might be one route where this group can get more of what they're directly looking for without us having to expend direct resources on it in actually developing the feature. So just a comment on clarifying why third party.
Yeah, no, it's a really good idea, and when Kirsten brought that in on the viewer there was gasps, and then we saw how it could work, and then we saw how we could improve it, and I think we are working with Kirsten on that. We're really lucky because, yeah, exactly, we are a community, and people are listening to us now and helping us, and by that we're helping them back. I don't have any more questions, so if you've got any more, send them to Flimsy, but I do want to sort of ask if there's anything that you guys, Rhett and Richard, would like from us that would help you.
Well, we certainly love hearing the feature requests, and as I said, we evaluate which ones make sense to us to take in the context of where we're going. We certainly always appreciate you guys' feedback on the stuff we're putting out there. I don't have anything specific today, although I do have one follow-up item, which is I do think that at a future Machinima Monday, it would be beneficial to have one of the mesh experts here. So I don't know. Richard?
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. I mean, this sort of feedback we're getting is great. Anything where, you have a bunch of great ideas for features, and just sort of just keep sending that data our way, and some of them will make it onto our plate.
that's all we can do, I think. So hang on. How does the SL cache work, and why do textures reload? So what makes you have to sort of rebake your avatar, because it will just do a double rebake sort of thing? That's a question from Ormond.
Well, rebaking your avatars is sort of independent of the caching. That's just having to do that just because there's a bug in the system in creating your textures. I mean, it's a fairly, I won't go into it, but it's a fairly complex process to create your baked textures. But in terms of actual, like, overall texture caching, I mean, it's a pretty straightforward approach to caching. I mean, we have a certain amount of space on disk, and the best thing you can do for yourself is to bump that up, go into preferences, and set that as high as you can stand. But when we start running out of space, we start throwing stuff out of the cache that we haven't used in a while. And there have been bugs over the years in that algorithm. We haven't, hasn't always performed as well as it could. But the basic principle is solid.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you for that. Chantal has now asked me the question I knew she was going to ask me. She'd like a 3D option to Viewer 2, because Chantal is the queen of 3D and she loves it. And we've got a very, very old viewer that will do 3D, and I think Kirsten's might be looking at that for us. So it would be really, really helpful if you could make Chantal's day and say, yeah, can we have Anaglyph 3D, please?
Yeah, Chantal is obsessed with 3D. Richard, you were going to answer, but I think that's another one where I think that if we can identify a third-party viewer like Kirsten's potentially who's willing to take the work, then we're willing to have the conversation with them and take it into the mainstream, if that makes sense. Richard, you were going to
add? No, I mean, I was just going to say it's one of those features that is easy to kind of whip up a demo, but it's hard to do thoroughly and completely. Making sure everything from in-world text to particle systems or whatnot works and looks good is a fair amount of detailed work. But yeah, no, absolutely, we'd love to have that come in as a third-party patch.
Now Chantal's cheering at home. I know she is, so that's good. Yeah, 3D on 3D, wouldn't it be fab? Wouldn't it be absolutely amazing? Probably the last question is, what is the optimum network bandwidth?
Richard could probably speak to that better.
Well, I've got 50 meg, so...
No, I mean, in all seriousness, it's sort of a difficult, I mean, like all my answers here, I'm kind of evasive to this because there is no simple answer. I mean, you could crank that up, but we're not going to necessarily take advantage of all that, and I don't really know what, I think the maximum depends on how many other people are nearby and all sorts of other variables, so it's hard to give a solid number. That said, I think the default we ship with is a bit on the low side.
Default is 500, isn't it? Which
right,
is
last I checked.
A bit on the low side, yeah.
Yeah, so I would say, double or triple that is probably a good middle ground. But if you go much beyond that, it's not really helping you.
So if you have, this is just me sort of following up on this question, I've got like 50 meg connection. Obviously I don't get that because I'm on wireless, so I get about 25. So I rack mine up to 10k because I can. But, and I know it's using that because I can see that from my viewer stats. But my question is, there was always some sort of half-truth going around that if you have your bandwidth set too high, more than your connection, it can affect people around you. Is that actually true facts, really, is what I think I'm asking?
So just to characterize the overall bandwidth usage, I think you'll find cranking it up will affect things like texture streaming, because that's, the way we're serving up those assets, it's easy to sort of parallelize and take advantage of excess bandwidth. But in terms of actual quote-unquote simulator updates where, seeing people move around, seeing objects move and whatnot, there's a limit on how fast the simulator can talk to you. And if, as you said, you set that value above what you can handle, then you're going to start dropping packets, and that's going to create havoc with your connection. Now, I don't think that should affect anyone else's connection. No, actually, I can't even think of a case where that would affect people near you. That would mainly just mess with your experience.
It was almost like an urban myth, and people used to shout at each other to put their bandwidth down because otherwise it will cause havoc for other people. But you know, I can understand that, and it's really nice that we can rack up the bandwidth now if we've got, you know, the bandwidth available for ourselves.
Yeah, I mean,
sort of thing.
The only thing I can think of is it would create extra simulator load, which might affect sim FPS, but I think the simulator would pretty much give up at that point and not try to keep sending you more information. I'm not a sim expert, so take that with a grain of salt.
All right, thank you. So I think we've finished bang on time for your half an hour, and thank you very much, both of you. It was really, really useful, and it was a pleasure having you here, and thank you very, very much. And I'll get with you, Rhett, to arrange to get a mesh expert in, and thank you very much for your time today.
Yep, no worries. Thank you, guys.
Cheers, everybody, for all your great questions. They were really, really good questions, so thank you. I think it's been really, really useful.